Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you have ever felt stuck trying to find a unique research topic, you are not alone. I'm here to tell you the secret, guys. That is the research gap. So today we are diving deep into the 7 types of research gaps that can help you to uncover fresh ideas, stand out in academia, and contribute something truly valuable. So grab your notebooks because this is going to be a game changer. Let's jump in. So among the 7 research gaps, first up we have the theoretical gap. That is the missing pieces in the puzzle. This gap happens when there is a missing link between theories, or when an existing theory doesn't fully explain a phenomenon. For example, imagine studies on motivation and productivity. One suggests money is the biggest driver, and another says job satisfaction is more important. But no one has fully explored how both factors work together. Boom! Here it is, your research gap, guys. So, as a pro, so as to get theoretical gap, you need to review literature and ask what is the missing. If two theories clash or don't cover certain aspects, that's your chance to step in. But speaking of these gaps, what if the problem is not the theory, but how it is being studied? So let's talk about that. That is the second research gap, which is methodological gap. At this moment, guys, you need to rethink how we study. This methodological gap happens when the way we study something is outdated, biased, or just incomplete. And consider this as an example. If most studies on work from home productivity use self-reported surveys, why not try real-time productivity tracking by changing the method? Here, you unlock new insights. So at this moment, you always ask, is there a better way to study this study again? If yes, congrats, you found a methodological gap. That is the second gap. Now, let's talk about gaps where we just don't have enough data yet. That is empirical gap. The empirical gap happens when there is lack of real-world data to back up theories. For example, there might be tons of theoretical research on how AI impacts education. But if no one has collected real student experiences, here we are missing crucial data. As a pro, you should look for theories that lack case studies, surveys, or experimental data, and conduct your own study, and you have got an original research project. Okay, guys? But what if the problem is not the data, but the way we define concepts? So that brings us to the fourth research gap, which is a conceptual gap. You ever notice how different studies define the same term in completely different ways? That is a conceptual gap. Lack of clear, agreed upon definitions. For example, studies on happiness might measure it as an income, life satisfaction, or mental well-being. But here, which one is correct? So without a universal definition, comparing studies is impossible. So as a pro, you need to find inconsistencies in how researchers define a concept and work to standardize or redefine it, because that is a strong research contribution. But sometimes, the gap is not in the definition. It might be in time. So let's talk about that, which is the fifth research gap. That is the temporal gap. This is the times have changed gap. So a temporal gap happens when the research is outdated or no longer relevant. For example, imagine a 2005 study on social media's impact on teenagers, and back then, Facebook was the king. But what about TikTok? What about Snapchat or AI-driven content today? So the landscape has changed completely. So if you find research that hasn't been updated in years, you need to revisit it with new data, so you will make a major academic impact. Now, let's talk about gaps that exist not over time, but across locations, which is the sixth research gap. That is a spatial gap. Ever notice that most studies come from a few select countries? The spatial gap exists when a researcher focuses too much on one region and ignores the other. For example, if 90% of leadership studies come from the US, here you should ask yourself, do the same leadership principles apply in Africa, Asia, or Latin America? We don't know unless someone fills the gap. So if you see research focused on one region, apply the same study to a different country or culture. There is an instant research opportunity. And finally, let's talk about the biggest gap of them all, which is literature gap, the seventh research gap. This is the ultimate research gap. A literature gap exists when there is simply no research addressing a particular question. For example, if you search Google Scholar and find no studies on the impact of AI on creative writing skills, there is a gap waiting to be explored. So if you can't find enough papers on a topic, you might be on to something big. So how do you put all of this together? And there you have it, the 7 types of research gaps that can help you craft an original and impactful study. As a quick recap, theoretical gap is conflicting or missing theories. Methodological gap is outdated or limited research methods. Empirical gap is lack of real-world data. Conceptual gap is confusing or inconsistent definition of concepts. And temporal gap is outdated research that needs revisiting. And spatial gap is studies focusing only on one location or region. And a literature gap is a completely unexplored topic. And finally, I have a question for you. Which type of research gap do you struggle with the most? Drop a comment below, guys. So, if this was helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. More research tips coming soon, guys. Until next time, happy researching.